guys, welcome back to Her and Family Homestead. My name is Amanda. Today's video is going to be all about how we can our trout. My husband and sons recently took a fishing trip to the river to fish for trout and steelhead, so we're going to can that in the pressure canner today. So we've got our bowl of trout here. I've got my jars all set up. The trout is freshly caught just yesterday and it's been kept cool overnight, and then we've brined it in some salt water for about an hour. And then I have my jars set up. Normally I would use a largemouth. These are smallmouth because that's all I have, which the only difference is it makes it a little harder to pack the fish into the jar. And I am using a recipe from the Ball Blue Book. The only difference is I'm adding about a half a teaspoon of salt to each jar, and that's just for flavor. So I've got a half a teaspoon of salt in each jar, and I'm going to start adding the fish to the jars. And it is a little bit of a messy process, but we'll wipe the rims down real good when we're done. You want to add them to the jars skin side out. These slices of trout have been cut to the right length. We want about an inch of head space. So I'm just going to put them in vertically, and then if there's some that are too short, we'll add extra to those jars. When you clean your fish, you just go ahead and leave the skin on, and you don't debone them or anything. Because the pressure cooker, what it does is it causes those bones to become very soft, just like you would see in canned tuna from the store. So I'm just going to add a few more into some of the jars that don't look completely full. Okay, now that my jars are full, I'm going to go ahead and clean the tops of the jars really well. And once I've got the jars completely cleaned up around the rims, then I'm just going to take some vinegar and wipe a final wipe across all the rims, just to make sure that that seal is nice and tight. And this way, when I put my lids on, there won't be any fat or anything from the fish between the jar and the lid. Now that my jars are all nice and clean, I'm going to go ahead and put on the lids and the bands. And these lids I have just washed. You don't have to preheat your lids. The pressure canner is going to take care of all that. My jars are room temperature. You can warm your jars up ahead of time before you put the fish in. I tend to not. I just make sure that my canning water is the same temperature as my jars so they don't crack. And we'll put the bands on. And you just want these fingertip tight, and what that means is when you tighten them down without holding the jar, you want to be able to just turn the jar barely with some light pressure from your fingers, just like this. And you do want to make sure that there's no chips on the rims of your jars, because that will give you a faulty seal. So I have my pressure canner set up. I used to have a second rack that looks like this, and I've since lost that, so I'll be using my regular water bath canning rack in the bottom of it. And this is so that I can double stack these jars. So once I have the first layer of jars in, then what I'll do is I'll put my second rack on top, just so that it covers them all, and then I can add some more jars to the top of my canner. There's about 2 inches of water in the bottom of the canner. And then these jars will just go on top. So now I'm just putting my lid on and aligning it, and then I just want to be sure that the dome will cover the top of the jars, which it looks like it will with room to spare. Now that my lid is on straight and the gap's the same all the way around, I'm going to tighten my wing nuts just snug at first, always working on the opposite side. And then I'll go ahead and tighten them down. Now I'm going to turn my burner on and bring the temperature up until I can see steam coming out of the vent pipe. It's starting to steam, so now I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes, and then when that goes off, I will put the weighted pressure gauge on. Now that my timer's gone off, I'm going to put the weighted gauge on top of the vent pipe, adjusting for altitude. We're high altitude, so we're going to use the 15 pounds of pressure. And once it's up to pressure, this weighted gauge will begin to jiggle, and this gauge over here will read 15 pounds of pressure, and then we'll start our processing time. Now that the steam is lifting the pressure gauge and the pressure dial reads 15, I'm going to turn it down just a bit and set the timer for 1 hour and 40 minutes. So I want to maintain this weighted pressure gauge jiggling between 1 and 4 times a minute. So I'll go ahead and regulate the temperature to keep it jiggling that often, but not constantly. So my 1 hour and 40 minute processing time has elapsed, and I went ahead and let it come down to 0 pressure. You can see there in the pressure gauge. Now I'm just going to very slowly take the weighted pressure gauge off. And then once that pressure gauge is off, I can go ahead and loosen the wing nuts and remove the lid. You want to be careful to remove the lid away from you because the steam inside can burn you still. And then I'll just carefully remove the lid and let the steam come out for a little bit. Let everything kind of get to the same temperature and the same pressure, and then I'll take my jars out. You can see once I got the lid off, the jars are bubbling away and several of them are sealing, so I'm going to go ahead and remove these. So as you can see, it's pretty straightforward. I hope this video helps you and you will try it for yourselves. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see the rest of our videos, and we will catch you on the next video.